piano to New Orleans. And that was my dream, so I did. After I left school, I got a job on a building site, carrying sheetrock up and down 7 flights of stairs for about 6 months. And then got on a plane to New Orleans. I told my mum I was going for 2 weeks, and that was 44 years ago. So I think if she'd known I wasn't coming back, she wouldn't have let me go. But they let me go, and I landed on my feet. But people were very kind to me, and it was even better than I thought it was going to be.
Your first piano gig in New Orleans was because another piano player didn't make the gig.
Yeah, I had a job. I landed a job painting a bar room, and the piano player on Tuesday nights was not very well known at the time, really, in the grand scheme of things, but he's now acknowledged as being one of the best piano players that ever came out of the city of New Orleans. And his name was James Booker. And then one night, I wasn't a very good house painter. And the owner of the bar used to get angry with me when he'd come in and find me. Instead of being up on a ladder painting, I was playing the piano in the front of the bar. And so on this one particular occasion when Booker didn't show up, he said, you know, make yourself useful for a change. And I was covered in green paint, and I was painting out there painting in the dark, trying to make some money, enough money to go out and see a band that night. He said, make yourself useful, get that paint off you, get on that piano quick, and start playing before all these people start asking for their money back, because Booker's nowhere to see him. And so I got on the piano and played. That was my first piano gig. I was a guitar player. I only knew about 5 tunes, but
What were some of the things that, because you got to see Booker play, obviously you got to see a lot of the greats those days. What were some of the things that you started picking up on piano from those guys? What are some of the elements of New Orleans music that you started to distill as you developed your own sound?
Well, as I say, I learned from records in England. I was a guitar player. I'd been playing gigs and making money since I was 14 in England. But when I got to New Orleans, I didn't bring a guitar with me. There was a piano in the house I moved into, and I was hearing James Booker, because he played on Tuesday nights, but he actually stayed upstairs in the apartment quite often. And so I'd be painting, and he'd be hanging out, because he got free drink at the bar. His manager was the guy that lived upstairs. So I was hearing Booker kind of almost every day. He would hang out, he'd sit there and play the piano, and I'd be on the other side of the glass painting the bar. But I already was familiar with New Orleans, but I loved New Orleans piano. And so New Orleans piano, how many, I can demonstrate some aspects just to explain. How many people in the audience are music lovers but not actually musicians? Okay, because I don't want to be preaching to people who already know this stuff, but just to give a few little insights into what's going on with New Orleans music. So in music you have a note, and a group of notes is a chord, and the most basic chord is called a major chord. If you change one of these notes, it becomes a minor chord, and nobody knows why, but they've done this experiment with remote tribes in Papua New Guinea and Africa, and they say, this experiment, which of these 2 chords sounds sad? This one? Or this one? Everybody universally acknowledges that this particular combination of notes, and no one knows why, it sounds melancholy. And this one doesn't. But if you play them both together, you get this. So it's either one or the other, generally speaking, because when you have this in music, that's called dissonance. And this is consonance. But the African contribution to melodic sensibilities, and I'm speaking very broad strokes, is that in the hands of a good musician, you can use both of those elements together, and with voice and with horns and strings, you can bend a note. You can go do do. You can bend up boom. You can't do that with a piano. If you play them both together, you get that, and it sounds unpleasant. If you do this, it happens very quickly but it's almost like having a happy ending at the end of a story. It makes you feel good.
The end of the story, folks.
And so that's just an answer to your question, what is it about the New Orleans piano? If I play, this is the most famous and basic New Orleans piano riff. It was like, listen to it. That's, if you slow it right down, it goes by so quickly you hardly even notice it. But it does something in people's brains, and it lifts you up. And it goes, something's wrong. Now it's fixed. And that's like a metaphor for life. You know? Everyone deals with on a day-to-day basis through the course of their life. But in New Orleans music, that's that whole story in a split second.
Music is
in
medicine.
some instances, you can, but music is much more complicated than that, obviously. And what's interesting is that you can actually have those two notes and separate them by an octave. And this, when you've just played the two notes, they sound very, once again, very dissonant. That's not pleasing to anybody's ears. I mean, Thelonious Monk and Schoenberg, and those people have messed around with dissonance, and dissonance is an important part of music. But if you take those two notes and add these other ingredients, add these two notes, now you've got this chord. That's called a raised, musicians call that a raised 9 chord, but that's the... Really with music, with New Orleans music, it's a combination of playing dissonance with, as I say, playing with these elements, things that are funky. That's on the melodic side, and then playing funky on the percussive side. Funk, and funk is a word that was an adjective that was first used to describe music in New Orleans. Funk used to mean something was funky, and it meant it smelled bad. It's like a pair of socks you've been wearing for a few days too long.
Or the Maple Leaf Bar at 3 a.m. or something like that.
Yeah. New Orleans is funky. You walk down Bourbon Street at 3 o'clock in the morning, it smells funky. Everybody understood what that word meant in the terms of a bad smell, but there was an instance in the recording studio in New Orleans where one cat wasn't quite getting it right, and then out of exasperation trying to find the words. Words are very... Music exists in a realm beyond the limitations of language. But in this particular instance, he said, I don't know, man, just play it like it's funky. And he said, oh, you mean like this? He knew exactly what to do, and that's kind of what New Orleans musicians do. So, you know, people don't understand that actually funk is the ethnic folk music of the city of New Orleans.
The ethnic folk music of the city of New Orleans.
It's funk.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because New Orleans musicians don't discriminate. One time I was sitting outside the mother-in-law lounge with Ernie Cado at about 2 o'clock in the morning. We both had little chairs pulled up. There was no one else in the bar. We were just sitting there talking. And his car came past, blasting out hip-hop, like one of those huge speakers in the trunk. And he said, man, he said, these kids, they think that's new. He said, they've been doing that here for 100 years. Because the groove that was coming out was New Orleans funk, pure and simple.
Absolutely.
So the roots of New Orleans music, that doesn't mean it has to all be fast and funky or nasty or whatever. For example, just to go back to that, what I was talking about before, here's another instance where you can take two notes that are essentially out of tune. Here, for example. If you add these notes, there they are, just those two notes by themselves. Painful. Put them in this chord. And all of a sudden it's soft and beautiful and
lovely.
So the exact opposite really of the same thing here. Dirty and nasty and... Anyway, so those are the colours that we play with. But at its root. So those are the tools that New Orleans musicians have been experimenting with for over 100 years.
Well, yeah, yes, absolutely.
And that was so cool and so hip that everybody else copied them. So all that stuff comes from New Orleans.
It is the root of all things musical. Well, you want to put it all together for us real quick and do a little tune?
All right. just make something up.
Fair enough.
I don't know what that was. We have to make up a name for it.